Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 23 now of The Bottom Line. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Syed, and we're bringing to you another very special episode of The Bottom Line here. In contrast to previous weeks where we talked about a multitude of topics, really, we're going to actually focus this week on a few more pressing matters here. So, as usual, Syed's going to kick things off with his tech update, including Canadapost breach that recently happened. We're actually also going to talk about an exciting project that's coming up on Cardano's blockchain called SundaeSwap. And we're also going to have an at-length discussion on Cathie Wood's stance regarding a massive deflation event hitting our economy. So lots of important things here to talk about today. And as always, we're going to end off reviewing last week's stock picks and giving our stock picks for the upcoming trading week. So with that being said, Syed, the floor is yours for the tech update.
Hey everyone, thank you Deepak for the introduction. For this week's tech update, there is a lot to cover, but not as much as the previous week. I wanted to keep it short because we do have a lot to cover in the rest of the episode, including cryptocurrency, Cardano's project coming up, and also Cathie Wood's. So with that being said, for this week, I wanted to start off by informing our viewers about a new Bluetooth flaw that lets attackers impersonate legitimate devices. So devices supporting the Bluetooth core and mesh specifications are vulnerable to impersonation attacks, and the auth value disclosure that could allow an attacker to impersonate a legitimate device during pairing. So again, I found this article interesting and just something to keep an eye out on if you do leverage Bluetooth, which I'm sure many of us do in our day-to-day lives when we use technology, right? So again, article will be in the description below. You can read on for the details about it, as it does go in depth. But yeah, now moving on. I talked about this one on our social media already, but I thought I would mention it again. A Japanese dating app, their customers' data got leaked. So 1.7 million customers' data was leaked, and the dating app operator Net Marketing Co. said Friday, so this past Friday, that personal data of 1.7 million users, including names and face photos, was likely leaked due to unauthorized access to its server. So the operator of the Omiai, so it's spelled Omiai dating app, said customer information provided to the company between January 2018 and last month have been stolen, and its probe found its data server was hacked at least several times last month. So again, server security, right? Who knows what ports, what they had open, what firewalls they had. So just something to keep an eye on in your own servers too, or in your own deployments, to make sure that you don't have any like random ports open, ports that shouldn't be open. And if you need to open ports up, make sure you close them after you're done utilizing them. So stuff like that, right? And that's why I wanted to bring this up. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about a Trend Micro research in regards to Kubernetes. So for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically a widely adopted container orchestration platform for automating the deployment, scaling, and management of containerized application. Unfortunately, though, like any other widely used application or technology on the internet, it makes for an attractive target for threat actors, right? As they are often misconfigured, especially those running primarily in cloud environments with access to nearly infinite resources. So this article by Trend Micro basically talks about like 50,000 IPs they've found compromised by an attack perpetrated by their team across multiple clusters, and several IPs were repeatedly exploited during the time frame of the episode during occurring between March and May. And most of the compromised nodes were from China and the US, identified in the ISP, so Internet Service Provider list, which had Chinese and US based providers as the highest hits, including some cloud service providers. And then it should be noted that the numbers reflect the likelihood of significantly more clusters in operation for the US and China than many other countries. I would love to cover Kubernetes in a future episode, but I thought this would be a nice introduction to tell you all what Kubernetes is and what a container is, and we'll talk more about this as in our future episodes as we progress in these tech updates. And because containers are widely used across all companies use them, you may use them in your day-to-day lives. and talking about them and their security is fundamental in my opinion, and just knowing what they are and how to secure them. So yeah, we'll talk more about Kubernetes and containers in the future, so stay tuned for that. Next up, Deepak mentioned this in the agenda. We also mentioned this on our social media, but Canadapost, unfortunately, they informed us this past Wednesday, that 44 large business customers of data of the data breach. There was a data breach basically, and 44 large business customers were affected by them, and this also affected 950,000 customers. So just a quick outline, like I said, it was 44 of its large business customers that informed that they were breached, and 950,000 customers were compromised. And it basically said that an electronic data interchange solution supplier had notified them that the manifest data held in their system, which are associated with Canadapost customers, had been compromised in an attack on May 19th. So this was actually this actually happened on May 19th, and it was reported a week later. They reported it a week later. Comport Communications is used by Canadapost to manage the shipping manifest data of large parcel business customers. So again, the data that was compromised was PII, so personal identifiable information. The information was from July 2016 to March 2019, and the vast majority, so approximately 97%, contained the name and addresses of the receiving customer, and the remainder 3% contained an email address or phone number. So yeah, developing story here, and again, this could be a potential ransom, as they had a ransomware issue back in November 2020 as well. So yeah, I'll keep you all updated if on developments on this, to find out what happened, how they got breached, and if a ransomware was asked for or anything like that. So yeah, stay tuned for this next week. I'll definitely have an update for this. Next up, I wanted to talk about a Facefish backdoor. So a malware that's spreading on Linux rootkits. So just quickly going over this, cybersecurity researchers have disclosed a new backdoor program capable of stealing user login credentials, device information, and executing arbitrary commands on Linux systems. The malware dropper has been dubbed Fishface, and it's basically has capabilities to deliver different rootkits at different times, and they use a blowfish cipher to encrypt communications to the attacker control server. So I'm not going to get into too much detail, but something to look out for, especially if you use Linux.
Thanks so much, Syed, for the tech update. So now, moving on to our next segment, we wanted to talk about Cathie Wood's comments relating to how she suspects a big deflationary event being on the horizon here. So just as a precursor to my little soliloquy here, I wanted to actually play that video of Cathie Wood's interview. So Syed, if you could just play the first few minutes of that interview, just for the interest of our viewers.
One thing I want to ask you, and we talked about it at the beginning, inflation. Your mentor, you and I talked about this just a few weeks ago, Art Laffer, you were in your 20s, you were focusing on the economy. It was a time where inflation was off the charts and everybody thought it would consistently stay that way. Laffer thought differently, and we know, well known in the supply side economics. Here we are at another time where the markets, the volatility is often guided by our inflation expectations. Is inflation going to be a problem in your view?
Well, we've been saying for some time, actually since the depths of the coronavirus, we were doing YouTube videos saying regularly, V-shaped recovery, businesses are way behind consumers. Consumers are buying all of these goods. In fact, that's all they can do because they're stuck at home, right? So they were buying non-durable and durable goods that could be shipped to them, right?
Right.
That part of consumption is 1/3 of consumption, and a disproportionate amount or percentage of the market basket of consumers was in goods for the past year. Businesses didn't expect it. They were behind even before the coronavirus. They had been lagging in terms of capital spending, in terms of inventories. They were worried about inverted yield curves and China-US trade conflict. There were many, many concerns. So they had been dragging their feet. They got even further behind and still haven't caught up. So what's happening now? Double, triple ordering, maybe quadruple ordering. Because they just can't get the goods.
Panic buying. We've been talking about companies panic buying too.
Buying. And so what I believe is we are setting up for a massive period of deflation. Now, let me explain that. there are three sources of deflation. One is when the orders, these double and triple orders, are canceled, right? Now, we have seen lumber correct 30% in the last week. I think this is the beginning of that. Copper is now starting to correct. And I believe that commodity prices went too far, too fast as businesses were scrambling and panicking, right? They were losing business to competition if they hadn't planned their inventories correctly. So that's one source of deflation, but that's only cyclical deflation. And we actually didn't expect it to start now. We expected it to start later in the year. But I guess it makes sense now that vaccines are here and consumers are shifting away from goods towards services or at the margin. The writing is on the wall. Those are double and triple orders are going to be canceled. Prices were too high, and we're probably going to see a drop in commodities. But there are two other sources of deflation out there.
There's a lot to dissect in what she said here, and obviously I don't pretend to be nearly as intellectual as someone like Cathie Wood is, but I'll try to give my 2 cents here. So obviously I think there's been a lot of fear going around in the markets, especially as it pertains to inflation, and it's given. I think it is warranted because we are printing about $120 billion USD, which is being added to the global system each month, right? So, I mean, the money supply is continuing to increase. One of the biggest indicators of inflation is the strength of the US dollar, and what we've seen for really since last summer when the US dollar it seemed to have peaked, especially as it gets marked against the CAD, is that it's been steadily declining, and at this point, like, everyone's trying to time the low on the US dollar before it makes its run up higher. But I think given the fact that there's more and more money being printed, more and more being added in circulation, it's going to continue to weaken the US dollar, and a weakening US dollar really implies more inflation, right? So I think this is a very unique perspective, contrary to what most economists would suggest in terms of heavy inflation coming. Cathie Wood comes on television and says, hey, no, wait a minute, I think there's a massive deflationary event coming, right? Naturally, you would think here, okay, so from a simple economic standpoint, you see commodity prices rising, that would indicate inflation to anyone, right? So naturally, if commodity prices are running up a lot higher, everything gets more expensive, puts upward pressure on prices, right? So how would you control this upward movement in prices? That would be interest rates. But the Fed's basically promised we're not going to raise too much of your interest rate until probably 2023, maybe even longer than that, right? So if we're not going to counteract these inflationary pressures with interest rates, then what's really going to cause it, right? So I think Cathie Wood here is obviously she's talking about the tech side, also reducing the costs like AI and whatnot as well. So she has that leg to it, but she's also trying to mention here that commodity prices have ran up far too much and they're due for what we call a correction, right? So I think this is analogous in some respects to growth stocks, which we saw double, triple, quadruple over the last year, and then you saw how they dropped 50, 60, 70%, right? So I think Cathie Wood is somewhat anticipating a similar sort of price movement of these commodities like lumber, like aluminum and whatnot. And one thing that I wanted to do is actually share my screen just for our viewers to take a look at the charts as well. So I've pulled up the daily chart here. So looking at this chart here, this is just lumber here, right? And we see how this has impacted especially the real estate market, right? Because as lumber prices have gone up, what's the lumber used in? It's used in houses, right? So you see from basically the start of the year, right? Like over the last little while here, even dating back to 2020 here, there was a massive increase, right? And this is really where the bulk of this housing market really started to take off. We can see even here where we live in Canada, it really took off probably in November, I'd say. November to about February is really, like, you saw it run up quite exponentially here, parabolic, you can say, in a way. So this chart to me looks like, again, like it looks like all of those growth stocks and even Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies to a certain extent, where you see a parabolic move up and now there's a little bit of a correction phase. So where we're at with this chart, like, I think what Cathie was anticipating is we're at a stage now where lumber prices would probably return to the former breakout area, probably around here. And if it doesn't hold here, then it's probably going to go back down to around this level, right? So this is just basic pricing here. But again, I think this is a key area to look at, because if it continues to break lower, maybe Cathie Wood is actually right in the sense that, okay, if lumber prices continue to drop, maybe we are going to experience a deflationary event rather than an inflationary event. But subsequent, like on the other hand, you can think if this actually recovers and pushes up towards all-time highs, we're actually going to see even more inflation. So again, it's hard to really tell which direction it'll go, but she is right in the sense that the lumber prices, at least for now, have peaked at this level, and they have corrected quite significantly. But it does remain to be seen where they're headed, right? And you can sort of see the same thing here on wheat, right? So obviously the wheat chart hasn't run up the same way lumber has, but again, like we reached the peak here at around 770, and now we're around 664. So there is a decent correction here as well, and we can even look at aluminum, right? So aluminum is still looking. You can't really say that there was much of a pullback, because this is again what I'm talking about with lumber here. Like you saw, okay, it went from 2540 all the way down to 2300-ish, right? But now it's back at 25. So it'll be interesting to see whether lumber and wheat and all these other commodities follow the same sort of trajectory where, okay, this is a minor correction for another leg up, or it goes the other way, like how the growth stocks or cryptocurrencies have gone, where they came back down, right? About 50%, 60%. So I think these are these levels that we have to be cognizant of, because commodity prices, I think, will guide us, right, in terms of whether we're going to see a lot of inflation or a deflationary event in the short to medium term, at least until interest rates climb up. Because again, like I said, the Fed is reluctant to raise interest rates for the next couple of years. So really, your benchmark for inflation will be these commodities. Definitely keep an eye out on this, and definitely keep an eye out on the relative strength of the US dollar, because as we know, if the US dollar is getting stronger, that's deflationary. But if it's getting weaker, then that points signs to more inflation is coming. So again, these are all tools that you should have and be aware of to keep an eye on, and just see where the macroeconomics are headed, right? Because I think that'll make you a smarter investor in the long run as well, just to be aware of what's happening in the broad economy beyond certain stocks that you may be looking at. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts to add to this, but I wanted to share this very important discussion, because I think we were hearing a lot of inflationary talks, but this is the first, like Cathie Wood's almost, I think, the first person to really come out and say, hey, whoa, put the brakes on. We might actually be in a deflationary event. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, feel free to add on to that.
For sure, yeah. The charts, the only thing that came to my mind, again, great points, very valid points, and I totally agree with everything you said. One thing that came to my mind with the charts, they look like crypto charts, especially the first one that you showed me, the lumber one. It looked like a crypto. I felt like I was looking at a cryptocurrency chart, like the ups and downs. It looked really, very volatile. So that's the initial thought I had. But yeah, I do agree with you and Cathie Woods about the inflation part, and keep an eye on these, and use these resources, the economic data, to your advantage, right? So you're prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And make sure that you're not, again, like I just mentioned, just don't focus on the certain stocks that you're invested in, because they're all ultimately impacted by what's going on in the broad economy, right? So you got to be aware of the macroeconomics before diving into the specific stocks that you're looking at investing. Okay, so obviously when you're looking for investment decisions, whether short term or long term, you want to see relative strength in the broad market, right? So these are all things that you should be aware of. And again, if any of our viewers have any other questions that come up here, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to shed some more light.
All right. Thanks for that segment, Deepak. Again, that was great, valuable information regarding inflation. Now, moving on now to our next topic. I wanted to talk about Cardano a little. And again, I talked about Cardano briefly on our social media, but kind of wanted to give our viewers more of an insight into their SundaeSwap project. So, what is SundaeSwap? I know I've talked about YaySwap, which came out May 27th, and that's on our social media, so be sure to check that out. But I wanted to talk about SundaeSwap. So what is it? It's an automated market maker, also known as an AMM, a decentralized application that will allow users to trade tokens native to the Cardano blockchain anonymously, fast and secure, right? So aiming to launch like June 1st, so next week. On their website, they initially had a launch date of August, but they're ahead of schedule. So June 1st, they were supposed to release last week actually, but then they announced on their website that their ISO, so their initial stake pooling offering, it's gonna launch this coming week, so June 1st. So keep an eye on that. Again, Cardano has a very bright future, and with all these projects leveraging their blockchain now, we had SundaeSwap, the very first one. There's a lot of other ones too, and I made a post about this on our social media. But Cardano has a very bright future ahead, and users who want these Sunday tokens before it launches. So again, there's only a few days before it launches, but if you do want to get it before it launches publicly, it is available to able to buy without the use of the CLI, and you could stake your ADA coins in a stake pool they set up, and the fees of which will be much higher than a traditional stake pool, right? So after 15 days of running the pool, they will be able to see the user's wallet address who have staked and airdrop Sunday tokens directly into your ADA wallet, basically, and that's how you can get an early access to it. But since the days are coming and it's gonna launch this coming week, it will be available on the exchanges. So again, I'll update our viewers and everybody on our social media what exchange, where you can get it from, and all that stuff, just like I did with SundaeSwap. So just wanted to let our viewers know, keep an eye out on June 1st. Cardano has SundaeSwap, SundaeSwap, and a bunch of other projects on their blockchain, and this is great for Cardano. Again, we talk about Cardano on our social media and this podcast here a lot, and this is just another step in the right direction, as pretty much the sky is the limit for this coin. Any thoughts, Deepak?
Yeah, no, I obviously that's all great information, Said. I think just broadly speaking here, Cardano is one of my favorite. As I mentioned to you off camera as well, like Ethereum and Cardano to me are the ones that are really going to carry us in the future. And it's interesting what ties Cardano has with Ethereum, because not everyone knows, but Charles Hoskinson was actually one of the co-founders of Ethereum, and now he's the founder of Cardano. So I think like the visionary and the individual that he is, I think these projects, like there's going to be a lot more coming, obviously, but I think Cardano eventually could. I mean, I'm being optimistic here, but I think it could actually exceed the market cap of Ethereum at some point. So, like, I think Cardano, like you said, has a very bright future, and as more and more projects come in, I think that's going to be more and more pronounced. And again, I think one of the main concerns around cryptocurrencies right now is the sustainability factor, and Cardano is clearly one of the most energy efficient ones out there. So, again, I think there's a very bright future here, and I think if you're a long-term holder, the short-term price action right now, obviously all cryptocurrencies are being affected quite negatively by all the FUD, we can say, the fear, uncertainty, and despair in the market. So I think if you are going to hold on to something long-term, Ethereum, Cardano, these are projects, and these are the coins that you want to hold long-term, right? So I think more and more of these projects are continue to come forward, and we'll be happy to talk about them as they do unfold on this channel.
Yeah, and for sure, it's not too late to get into Cardano. And I mentioned this. We brought up Cardano back in February, and we kept telling our viewers that Cardano is a great project. But again, even right now, it's not too late to get in. So keep your eyes out. And if you have any questions regarding Cardano and any of their projects, feel free to reach out.
All right. So going on to our final segment of this week's episode here, we're going to review our last week's stock picks and give our picks for the upcoming trading week. So with that being said, I'll kick things off here. So my stock pick last week was actually Coinbase. Given the fact that cryptocurrencies were really in the gutter for the last little while, I wanted to give Coinbase is basically a bounce play, right? I obviously believe in it long term, but I think right now, just because cryptos have been beating down so much, I think at some point they're due for a little bit more of a bounce. So I think this week was actually a good week for Coinbase here. Obviously opened the week around $225 per share, really. Jumped, I think, almost to 250, close to 250 at one point. 247. And since then, closed the week at 236. So obviously there was a little bit of weakness heading into the close. But overall, I think you saw some decent gains if you held throughout the week here. So I think it was a good swing trade for this past trading week.
And once again, to add on to that, Coinbase is also a long-term hold, in my opinion, as well as the crypto market, which many believe is still in a bull run, is going to be in a bull run. So again, this stock is again a long-term stock to keep on your watch list as well. Moving on now, Nvidia was my stock pick from last week, and just looking at the charts, it had a catalyst this week coming in, which was the earnings, and that really helped it, to be honest, because it went to 640 and it closed at 649. It started the week off at 616 and it ended off at 649. And pretty much like I said last week, this company, keep them on your watch list. They got a very bright future. They also have their 4-for-1 stock split coming up, which is going to be a great buying opportunity for someone that wants to get in, because it's going to divide their price that they are right now by 4. And basically per share price is going to be, the buying point is going to be lower for new investors that want to get into this get a position into this. So keep this company and this stock on your watch list for the foreseeable future, as they have a very bright future and you can benefit a lot from them. Now moving on, we're going to talk about our stock picks for this coming trading week. So Deepak, going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, so first, Majestic Silver is actually my stock pick for this week. Really beyond this week, I think for the next few months here. And again, this is more of a play on inflation, really, and that was one of our our main segments in this week's episode. But Syed, if you can go actually to the 6-month chart, just to give our viewers a little bit more perspective. So if you go to the tail end of that on the left side, Syed, um, you can see back in November it was about $13.50. So obviously it was part of that short squeeze in February. So it's a little bit distorted, that little peak that you see there in February 2021. But again, I think it peaked at around almost $30 at that point. So it did cool off inevitably as part of the short squeeze going down, things stabilizing. But again, I think there's another short squeeze actually in play right now. So this is another candidate you might consider to play the short squeeze if that's something that you are interested in doing. But I think beyond that, this has more of a long-term leg in the sense that silver tends to obviously jump, as well as the gold here, as inflation kicks in. So I think if we do experience significant inflation, silver stocks, and not just First Majestic, any real silver stock that you can think of, would be a beneficiary of that. So again, keep this on your watch list. I wouldn't invest in this for the super long term, but I think in the short and medium terms, this is something that you could take a swing at if it is something that interests you.
For sure, absolutely. And then, just like I did 2 weeks ago, I kind of wanted to switch things around and talk about a coin for you guys to look out for, not only for this coming week, but again, for the long term. And this coin right here is called Kusama. You may or may not have heard of it, but I'll briefly explain why I like this coin. So basically, you may or may not have heard of Polkadot. We did talk about Polkadot several times on our podcast during the crypto exclusive, and also when we mentioned cryptocurrencies. Right, Polkadot has a bright future, and that everybody talks about that coin. But you may or may not know that Polkadot leverages what Kusama's blockchain. Basically, all of what Polkadot has to offer comes from this coin, and the market cap for this coin is still fairly low. It's at 2 billion. So it still has a long way to go, in my opinion. And right now, if you look at their chart, their all-time chart, the highs were like at 545. And right now, it's at its very low. It's pretty much on sale, if you ask me, at 283. It could go down more, and it's a great buying opportunity. Again, if you know how Cardano works, I'm sorry, not Cardano. If you know how Polkadot works, then Kusama is basically the same concept. And once again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I'll make social media posts on our TikTok about this coin to tell you all what exactly the blockchain does and potential projects on it, and so you guys know what this coin's all about. And as always, not financial advice. Always do your due diligence, but it's It's a great coin to invest in. Even it says right here on CoinMarketCap, it's self-described as Polkadot's wild cousin, right? It's an experimental blockchain platform that's designed to provide a massively interoperable and scalable framework for developers. So it's built on Substrate, a blockchain building kit developed by Parity Technologies, and it has almost the same code base as Polkadot. And I mentioned this before, right? Polkadot is one of the most successful interoperable blockchains out there. So again, you can read this on your own. This is from CoinMarketCap, and I once again will cover this on our social medias, on our TikTok for sure. Yeah, so keep this coin on your watch list, not only for this coming week, but for the long term as well. Alright, so that wraps up all we had to cover for weekly episode 23. Once again, Deepak and myself would like to thank you for tuning in on YouTube and listening to the audio of this podcast. If you enjoyed the content, as always, if you could please leave a like on this episode, on this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you following us and supporting us on TikTok and Instagram and all of our social medias, thank you very much. We appreciate all your love and support there as well. And just a reminder that next week we have a special announcement coming up during episode 24, so stay tuned for that. I'm sure all of you guys will like what we have to tell you about. So yeah, next week that's coming up, so very exciting news coming up for you all. And yeah, stay tuned for that, and we'll have that for you next week, and as always the latest updates as well. With that being said, I myself, Syed, and my co-host Deepak would like to thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week. Have a great Sunday, everybody, and the rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.